We're now in the second part of this 10th chapter of Sefer Melachim Alef. We're still learning a little more about the role of Malkat Shiva, the Queen of Sheba, as she is known, who most likely comes from Africa. There is a possibility that she heralds from somewhere in Arabia, but most seem to think it's most likely that she came from Davka, from the world of Africa. And we saw a lot about it last we learned, but I think there's a little more to say. So this shiur today will be sort of closing up this unit. Forgot to mention before I got the recorder underway, there will be that shiur for Purim. Then the following week is Purim. And then after that, as is our minhag, we will be on break from Melachim Alef in this slot. Instead, it'll be related to Pesach, as is the minhag. And then after Pesach, we'll resume and we'll be talking about everything that comes after. So this is like one last concluding week about Shlomo HaMelech at his zenith, let's say, and the reality that he is very much sought after. Klal Yisrael is sought after. He's the representative, and a lot of trade going on. We see from a political, a military, economic, but also something else, a culture of intelligence, if you will, that is attractive to the world, that people are coming from far and wide to engage, to learn from him, to take in a shiur, if you will, and to see what it can mean for them as a what should I say, as a not just a king, but today you'd use the expression, I was resisting the term, but I'll say it anyway, a thought leader. That's sort of the strange way that it's described in the today in common parlance. Okay, let's see a few things inside. First of all, last we talked about the idea outside that these people were coming, and I mention it now again, but just to show you inside, if you will, that when Malkat Shiva came, she spoke to the king and she engaged him. So says the description, that she had some kind of questions she was asking him. It doesn't tell you in the Navi what it was that she asked him. Pasuk, right at the beginning of the parak again, she arrives with all sorts of riches, and she speaks to him, everything that was within her heart. He tells her everything, and she sees how wise he is. She sees how wealthy he is, and she's asking him all sorts of different questions. She comes to ask him. Pasuk Alef already puts that as the koteret. Just want to highlight and emphasize, it was for the sake of Hashem. That's an important feature here. And it wasn't a question of propitiating the God of Shlomo. They were attracted to Shlomo and his wisdom, his godly wisdom. And that's here right on the screen, the Yakut Shimoni. She came to speak to him. Mau bechidot. A chida means a riddle, a question, puzzles. Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Shalom, Amar le, excuse me, Ata Shlomo Shamati Alecha v'al Malchutecha. Are you the Shlomo that I heard so much about? Amar la hein, yes indeed. Amar la imani shoela davar me'itach ata meshivani. If I ask you questions, will you answer me whatever the questions are? Amar la, he answered here, Ki Hashem yitain chachmi piv dad utvuna, means that Hashem will give the wisdom. Where does this? It's a quote from his own book that he wrote, Sefer Mishlei. Hashem will place the wisdom from his mouth, as it were, comes intelligence, comes understanding. In other words, he's quoting chapter and verse from the wisdom literature that he himself is the author of. Why? To show, listen, I have a whole series that I put out, Shirim, Mishlei, Kohelet, perhaps you've heard of it. But more seriously, the Mishlei, we saw already in chapter 5 that there were apparently thousands of Mishalim. Turn back to chapter 5. Where is it? Pasuk Tet and onward. Look at page 408 in the Koren Tanakh. Page 408 in the version I'm using, the old version of the Koren Tanakh. There's already a new one. So it describes Vayitain Elohim Chochma Lishlomo Utvana Harbe Meod V'Rochav Lev Kachol Shel Svat Hayam. He's brilliant. And Vaterev Chochmat Shlomo Mechachmat Kol Bnei Kedem Kochachmat Mitzrayim. He has more knowledge, more wisdom, I should say, from all of those who are Bnei Kedem. What's that? The Fertile Crescent. Everywhere points east. And more than Mitzrayim, points west. He's between the different empires, etc. And it gives you all these different names. We talked about it when we were here, not to learn them again, but Me'etana Ezrachi, Veheman V'chalkol, V'darda B'nei Machol, Vayihi Shemo B'chol Agoyim Saviv. These names have a meaning on the level of Pshat. Chazal understand their references to Avot, references to Moshe Rabbeinu, the great people. He had more wisdom than all of them. Vayidaber Shlosh Talafim Mashal, Vayihi Shiro Chamisha Va'alef. He has 3,000 allegories, aphorisms, adages, and the like, and his poetry, his lyrical verse, 5,000. Vayidaber al ha'etzim min ha'eretz asher b'levanon v'ara izov asher yotzei bakir vayidaber al behema v'ala ov v'ala remes v'ala dagim. To put it in the level of pshat, he understood botany and he understood biology of all living creatures. They came from all of the nations. Now, we've learned a lot already together over the years about how things are structured, and we've learned about one of the important limitations in Pshat. If everything is only going to be organized in a chronological order, we're missing out on important messages that could otherwise be conveyed by the words of the Tanakh. And we've seen that very often. Theme, messaging of other types, whether it's exhortatory, whether it's in order to reorder things, some other purpose, to give us background about something. Chronology does not rule the roost. Sometimes theme overtakes chronology, or other priorities will put chronology in the second or third slot of importance. And here is a great example. Psukim Tet through Yodalad is the Koteret. Where are you going to see that that's true? Who came? So there's a digression, because when Malkat Shiva will come, it won't just be about the wisdom that she will seek from him, but his wealth and the fact that he's built a house for Hashem already, and that he has a beautiful palace and a throne. All of these elements are coming up, and they're going to be expressed. And in fact, if you look at the sort of the order of the sections, at the beginning of Shlomo's career, after the business with Adoniyahu, he has a visit from HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a dream, and he's asked, what would you like? And he asks for wisdom. Hashem tells him, okay, I'm going to give it to you. Here's an example of the wisdom internal. He's adjudicating the case of the two women, right? That's chapter 3. Then in chapter 4, to the end of chapter 3, into chapter 4, we're learning about all the different governors, his rulership, his governance over the whole area, right? Chapter 5. Again, I usually don't like anything having to do with chapter divisions by number. You know me already. But at the bottom of page 407, it tells you he was politically ruling on all of the places from the Nahar of Eretz Plishtim till Gvul Mitzrayim. Everyone's bringing gifts to him. And here is about his financial wealth. There's that category. Then we come to the intellectual wealth. That's chapter 5, verses 9. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Chapter 5, verses 6 through 8. That's military. And then chapter 5, verse 9 through 14 is the intelligence factor. And then we get to the actual stories of encounter. Hiram comes along to help him build the Mikdash, and he builds the Mikdash, and he builds his palace, and the inauguration. And then the Queen of Sheba, Malkat Sheva, comes. You could almost call this story of Malkat Sheva, chapter 10, the story that showed the ultimate accomplishment of Shlomo: political, military, economic, religious, and part bound up with the religious is the chachma they got from Hashem. And when she comes to him, and so the Melachim Shimon is drawing it out here, she comes to him and, are you the famous person I heard about? If I ask you questions, will you answer? What does he answer? Like Yosef HaTzadik answered before him, like Daniel would answer later. Hashem has the answers. He's going to give me the wisdom. It's not really from me. Then will come the actual riddles. Let me pause here for a minute and take some questions, comments. Shelley, is your hand?
Okay.
Shelley first.
Helen, Then Helen.
Shelley,
Okay.
yeah, then Helen after. Yeah, Shelley, go ahead.
Actually, I'm going to talk about a point that Helen and I talked about after last class.
Great.
The idea that the word is used is chidiot, riddles.
Riddles, yeah.
Riddles, okay. Riddles, Helen pointed out that that word is used in the Shimshon story. And that's Shimshon when he's got married to the Philistine woman who's not Delilah. There's a thing, riddles, and she betrays him. Okay,
Yes.
so we have this idea when we're studying, don't we, that one word in something else is related to the word that we're dealing with now. So
Yeah.
riddles are bad in the Shimshon story. So is it possible that riddles are bad here, that she comes here more to think, this guy can't be for real. And then later on, he is for real. And when it says levava, her heart, she changes her mind and she realizes, boy, this guy really is both godly and smart. And,
Right.
So is she a scoffer to begin with?
On the level of pshat, certainly not. In the medrash, there's more tension there. You're on to something with the riddles, but you're preempting our class when we get to it. It'll be in a little while, so you remind me that you and Helen came up with this idea first. The connections between Shlomo and Shimshon, not only the alliteration between the two, but of course, there's an intertwining here about how things end. Both marry foreign women, both seem to be on one level. Everything's going the right direction. Hashem chose them prenatally, but something goes off the rails toward the end in some way, each in a different way, but there are parallels there, right? So we're going to have to get back to it. I don't want to go farther than that right now, but thanks for bringing it up, because yes, we'll be bookmarking this line, the chidot, and there will be some parallels that we'll come up with, including a Rambam, in fact. Okay, but thank you for that. Helen, thoughts? Just unmute, I don't hear you. Helen, I'm sorry, I still don't hear. It must have muted by accident. Yeah, now I hear you. Okay, go ahead.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, Shelley couldn't have said it better about the chidot, but now I have another crazy thing. Just at this time, I gave up my Smithsonian thing. I got a magazine, Copper and the King, all about Timnah, at the place where the copper mines were. And it's a fact. I urge everybody to get this copy, look at this copy about Timnah, the mines in the Arava, and all the archaeologists discovering so many things. First, they said the Egyptians owned it because it was hieroglyphics. Then they said the Edomites really owned it. And it's but the point I'm bringing out, they don't show any broken buildings like Pompeii around the area. So he quotes that the people were joyous and happy after the festival, and they went to their homes. But the text says they went to their tents. And so I want to talk to you about that. This was a nomadic society, and that's why Timnah doesn't show any broken buildings of archaeology.
Interesting.
So the pasuk said the people were joyous and glad and went back to their tents.
Interesting.
So do you see that? Do you see that pasuk after the festival?
I'm not exactly. I mean, it mentioned that that's already back at the end of chapter 8, if that's what you're referring to.
Right. But
but that's because they had houses. They had houses already, and the tents was already, and was much earlier. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what you're driving in terms of the tents, but I'd love to see that Smithsonian.
Right, you must see it. It's outstanding.
Sounds exciting. Yes,
but there's no evidence in this text about King Solomon and copper mines. Is that true? In the text, we don't. Is there? I don't
recall. I mean, about the mines.
later, earlier in Devorim, it mentions, he says, the archaeologist, that metallurgy was evident already in Devorim.
Okay, yeah,
Some
יכול להיות.
conflict.
יכול להיות. I'd love to see this
Okay,
article.
sorry.
Listen, let's
Yeah,
get
I'm
back to what
sorry
we're
to
talking about now, which
interrupt
is
you.
the Queen of Sheba,
Okay,
and we'll have to come back
Okay.
again to the copper mines a little later if that's okay. I want to stay on topic. Let's
okay,
go back,
sure,
but
okay.
thank you for that. Appreciate it. So, Malkat Shiva, thank you very much for those comments. Both of you appreciate it very much. And of course, again, we'll get back to it shortly. We come to a later parak. And fascinating about the copper, I'd love to see that as well. So, Malkat Shiva asks questions of Shlomo HaMelech, and it's interesting to hear what these questions are about. I want you to hear it not only as I'm saying it and translating the words, but to think like what is underneath these questions? Meaning, are they literally just like she just said, let me just stop you up. Here's some good ideas. Like this will be like teasers, you're at the table for like entertainment? Or is there something deeper that she's interested in here about trying to understand his knowledge of the world, being able to see past things and through, what the Pshat seems to present? Again, none of this is in the Pshat. So on the level of Pshat, she brought him riddles of some sort. Rav Meidan, by the way, thinks that these aren't riddles like she's trying to stop him up. It means that she's dealing with the puzzles of politics and economics. And this is ultimately a political engagement that will conclude with what amounts to a treaty, an exchange of goods. And one of the things that Shlomo gives to her is an agreement that they will be connected from a political perspective. Here he's making now inroads possibly into Africa, possibly into areas in Arabia, not entirely clear, but most likely Africa. Anyway, here are the riddles. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4 different riddles that she brings him. And each one I will submit to you, the Bali Medrash, either they have a tradition that this is what she actually asked, or they wrote this to try to explicate, like, what exactly is Malkat Shiva care about asking riddles? What are these riddles? Or was she trying to figure something else out? Amra lo, she said to him, Ma'u shiva yotzim v'tisha nichnasim shnayim mozgim ve'echad shoteh. What does it mean? 7 go out, 6 come in, 2 pour, and 1 drinks. Amar la, he said to her, Bevadai shiva yotzim hem yemei hanida, tisha yarche hirayon nichnasim, shnei dadim mozgim, v'avlad shoteh. It has to do with women, has to do with birthing, with the cycle of life. A menstrual cycle, a birthing cycle, a nursing mother, and a baby that drinks. Riddle 1. Riddle 2. V'od ani shoelet. Isha she'amra livna, avich avi. Ziknecha ba'ali. Ata b'ni v'ani achotcha. A woman said to her son, your father is my father. Your grandfather is my husband. You are my son, and I am your sister. Amar la, he answered her, V'vadai b'notav shel Lot hayu. These are the daughters of Lot. Number 3. Vodugma acheret astalo. Heviyaz zcharim nekevot lefanav kulam b'mar'eh echad u'v'koma achad v'chsut echad. Another example. She brought before him men and women who were completely, they looked alike. They were the same size, the same dimensions, appearance, etc., and they were wearing the same types of clothing. Amrale, she said to him, can you separate for me the men from the women? Miyad Ramaz l'sarisav. Immediately he hinted to his eunuchs, his people who were there, and what did they do? Vevilo egozim uklayot. They brought various nuts, various little shells, different things. He gave it out in front of all the people. The men who were not embarrassed, they were not bashful, they took it in their clothing. The women who were embarrassed, they took it in their kerchiefs somehow. Amarla, he said to her, Elu zcharim ve'elu nekevot. Ve'odugma acheret asta. Another one. Havila fun of Mehulim ve'arelim. She brought before him those who were circumcised, those who were uncircumcised, presumably Jews and non-Jews. Amra le, hafreshli Mehulim min arelim. Separate from me those who are Jewish from those who are not, those who have a brit, those who do not. Miyad mazle kohen gadol upatach at Aaron habrit. So the kohen gadol got the word from Shlomo. He opened up the Ark of the Covenant. Mehulim shebem karu b'chatzi komatam. Those who had a brit milah, they bowed down, halfway. V'lo od el shnit malet pneim yiziv hashchina. Their faces filled with the radiance of the divine presence. Va'arelim shebayim naflu al pneihem. And those who were arelim, the non-Jews, the Gentiles, so they fell down on their face, they collapsed. Miyad Amalei said to, okay, Elamahul ve'elu arelim. Amrallah, Amralei, me'echem chazeh. How did you know that you could do this? Amarla, he said to her, Mi bilam, dichtiv nofel glui naim, ilu shaya nofel heroev lo klum. I remembered it because it says in the Torah that Bilam described himself as nofel, falling down, uglui naim, and then having a revelation to the eyes, meaning a vision. If not for the fact that he fell down, he would not see anything. He had to do that. He had to fall on his face. 4 different examples. 1, 2, right? Well, you could say actually all 4. I'm curious, since we've been learning together for quite a while. Anyone want to take a stab at 1, if not all 4? What are these riddles about? What is she trying to figure out from Shlomo? Any takers? You could just chalk it up to, it says it in the Medrash. It's not the pshat. Larry, you trying to speak? Go ahead.
How to distinguish among people. How to distinguish among people.
How to distinguish among people. At least, certainly the last 2: men versus women, and Jews versus non-Jews. Right? The question here, if I want it to be, I don't think it's necessarily anachronistic to say, what's the difference between the men and the women? If I put them in the same clothing, they're the same person. There's no inherent difference in conduct. There's no etiquette differences, etc. So he created a scenario where at least the conditioning, we will say the social conditioning of that time was at least that still seems to be the men didn't, it was fine for them. They took the stuff and they put it in their clothing because they're holding up, they're wearing robes. Yeah. So they're holding it in whatever kind of robes. Nobody wears pants really. They maybe the michnasayim are basically undergarments in those days. They don't have long pants. So they're holding it up and they're putting the food in. The women aren't going to do that. So they have kerchiefs. They're putting it in the sudarim. Yeah, it's either the sudar that goes on the head or around the chin. Whatever they're doing, it's something more tsanua. Differentiating between Jews and non-Jews. Again, here the mehulim v'arelim, that's the description between Jews and non-Jews. When everybody's wearing clothes, like how do you know the difference? Says Shlomo Melech, I'll show you the difference. Look at the interaction with Kedusha. Look what happens when there's a hitgalut, a revelation. The people with Brit Milah, the men, they're part of the covenant. So for them, the Aron HaBrit, the Ark of the Covenant, different covenant, but the same covenant on a certain level, right? You have the Brit Milah, Brit Ben Betarim, that's a Brit Avram, then you have Brit Sinai. That's what's happening. Now, okay, here we are. This is the encounter with Kedusha. Here she asks, and I'm going to try not to be anachronistic, but I think the question really is, I made them look the same. Ein Hevdel in terms of how they think, in terms of how they look at the world, right? Their inherent sense of privacy, bashfulness, etc. It's effaced. No. It's actually, there's something characterological, you could say, is wired in. Again, whether the nature, nurture, we can debate till the cows come home. But that's 1. 2, Kedusha. What is this about the cycle of life? I mean, she gave him all these numbers. Yeah, the numbers. Anyone have any thoughts? What is this? The 7, the 9, the 2, the 1. Any thoughts? Well, I'm open to suggestions. I wasn't sure myself. A lot of playing with the numbers over here, but to what avail? I wasn't sure. And here, I hope I'm not throwing too much into it. I hope I'm not. But she's bringing up a question. She already knows the answer to it. She has to know that he knows Tanakh. But who are the Benot of Shalot? They give rise to the nations of Moab and Ammon.
And Moab is his ancestress.
Exactly. And Ammon, as we will see later, will also be someone very important to Shlomo.
She's Nama, who will be the mother of Rechavam, but we don't hear her mentioned at this point.
Okay. Well, it's not mentioned at this point in the Pshat, because she's not relevant to the story at the moment. But since, in spoiler alert, a chapter and a half, we'll be talking about Rechavam. He wasn't born right then at that moment. So presumably she's one of the wives, it's known. And among them, which are the most controversial? Well, certainly Bat Paro has been mentioned a few times, but there's also going to be this thing, Na'amah, who heralds from the nation of Ammon, is the mother of the next king. So she sort of brings this up, right? The lines and the fact that this was a very labyrinthine relation, to put it charitably, between Lot and his daughters. But she's sort of raising that issue, lineage issues, and I think, I don't know, but my supposition, again, I think these two are more opaque to try to figure out what she actually trying to ask him. Was this just a question about biology, and having to do with numbers? Like, I don't know, I don't exactly know why it was necessary to give him this in a quantified manner for him to unpack it. I'm not sure. And this one I think is related to the family lineage. Shelley, go ahead, please.
Well, if you remember, in Egypt and in other countries, you did marry your sister. The yichus between the lines was very important for the next king. And obviously, if she knows anything in Tanakh, which she does seem to,
She does.
Exact opposite in Israel. There's all these laws of who you can marry and who you can't marry, and it's got nothing. Close family members are bad. So she may be testing him on this because that's not what she's used to. The greatest empire in the world is Egypt, and you do marry your sister or half sister or something. So what are you giving me? And that's why you would both of those. Certainly the one with Lot and his daughters. So, what are you talking about? That it's no, in your Torah, it's no good. Look at where your ancestor from Moab.
Interesting. Okay.
I'd also, I think it goes to what was said earlier. It does go to differentiation among people. The fact that there was these incestuous relationships in this lineage goes to distinguish between Torah values versus what came before.
Okay, it could be. Again, this was the cloud, though, that hung over the family of David, the Malchut Beit David.
That's understood. It may also be a gentle shtuch. It may also be.
Yeah. That it may be. It may be kind of saying, like, you should have thought of this, like, that our morality is not that. Yeah,
but it's curious why she would be bringing out. It's not clear whether this is meant as a l'shvach or l'gnai, for the reason that Shelley just said. And so that I'm very curious. That I'm curious about why she's. I think it goes to distinguish, as I said, among folks, but why she's raising this, it's another factor. another difference, but I don't understand why. And I will be quiet, so you will be able to explain why.
No, I'm actually going to tell you, I'm stumped on this. I'm not entirely sure. And I feel I have a good idea. As you know, I don't hesitate to say it. I'm not sure. But what I do know, based on the latter two, is clearly that there is, it's not like, let's have a good time. Let me quiz you. It's like the state fair. We want to see stump the genius or something. There is a deeper layer. She came from another culture in another faraway land, and she's trying to ask him these questions. There's a deeper element of what she's driving at in this conversation than the surface. There's something lying beneath the surface. Shelley, another point? I'm sorry, your hand is up.
Yes, I'm wondering if it's lying beneath the surface. She is the queen of a particular country. She needs a king. And there's nothing, she may need a king. Let's put it
we
this
saw
way.
last time that actually the Gemara said specifically, don't think she's the queen of such and such and the king is back at home.
Right, she's the ruler. So she's the ruler and she's going to need a king. This is the premier king of the entire country. And she's saying, wow, okay, we don't think that there's a son from Bat Paro. So if she's putting in the business with Ammon and Moab, okay, well, your Torah says that you're not supposed to have these close relatives.
How did this happen?
And maybe, so I can't help but think that maybe she's looking for a husband, possibly, an alliance, because in those days, alliances were also marriage. So it's not so much a husband, but as somebody else, and then possibly uniting the kingdoms through marriage and the son and stuff like that. And I'm actually better for you, and my kid would be better for you than anybody that came from this murky kind of thing.
Yes. I mean, could be, since that's your lineage. So therefore, why wouldn't, all right. I don't say no. I'm just not sure.
If he can marry Bat Paro and she can convert, certainly the Queen of Sheba could convert. I mean, he's got so many foreign wives that he's converted that it's
Do you think he's here trying to get married to him?
Yeah. There's because she's not Jewish, that's not an obstacle to becoming.
Right. Well, that's true. That's true. Someone else wanted to mention. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that this is a little more global, not so direct for her purposes for the moment. She's looking at 4 different views of perpetuality. We've been around forever. Other nations have been destroyed. What makes us tick? How do we keep this longevity?
Oh, okay. Also a nice idea.
And she picks the 4 points: morality, lineage, kedusha, halacha.
I like all these suggestions. So everything good. That's good. Huh. Okay. I guess we'll let's leave it here and move on, because we'll have to figure things out. Again, so we'll get it maybe on the next time we get back to the Sefer. Could be in a few years.
I think that's a nice idea, and
very nice.
How would you include the riddle about the cycle of life of the birth?
Halacha. That's halacha.
Halacha, because there's 7 days of nida, 7 days. That's a halachic piece. That's interesting. It is halachic.
But everything is halacha. Okay. All right.
Well, the 9 months before the baby's born is not, and the nursing part is not. But the part about the seven days, interesting. I don't know. The admixture of halacha and nature. I don't know. Tzarech Ian. I will leave it as a Tzarech Ian. That's the best I can offer you, is a Tzarech Ian, because I'm just not sure what else to make of it. I'm not sure. What I do know though is that when we look at the what's the word, at the section that tells us a little bit about the wisdom on and on of Shlomo, it's trying to tell us it just like the story of the two women with the baby was a story that was typifying what was going on in general. In other words, a lot of people came and actually had that encounter and those questions, etc. So too, along came this queen that typified in so many ways, because the moment that she came was already when everything was at its zenith. It's not the only person who ever came, and it's not the what's the word? She's not the sole individual who's gaining from interactions with Shlomo. She's an example of what went on all the time. Yeah. In fact, and now we'll go back to some other sources here to fill out the point. I mentioned this in passing last time, but it behooves us to see it. In the Hemek Davar, he has a commentary there. I think there's actually the Herchev Davar of the Hemek Davar, where he points out that in the section on the Korbanot, there's the Herchev Davar, he explains the holiday of Sukkot, as is well known, 70 bulls against the 70 nations, and then Shmini Atzeret just for us and Hashem, right? The 71st nation, as it were. So he writes that what is it about the international element of the Yom Tov of Sukkot? He writes, "Mishum hachi katav b'sefer Zechariah dela'atidu gam umar ha'olam ba'im b'chol hamoed Sukkot la'amod al korbanam." In the future, says Sefer Zechariah, the nations of the world will come to stand next to the korbanot that are being offered in their name for the universal element. In order that they will also recognize that Hashem is the King, the Lord of hosts. They'll understand that their own sustenance is dependent upon the musafim that are offered in the Beit HaMikdash, i.e., that it's all from Hashem, right? That the Jewish people, bracha, were the source of bracha, sort of the conduit for the bracha that comes to the world and the rain that falls for the world. That's the Hemek Davar's Nitziv's understanding. That was the minig already in the time of Shlomo. Now here we go. Therefore, Shlomo would recite the Megillah of Kohelet and Chol HaMoed of Sukkot before the wise people of the world. The people would come along. Even according to the one who holds that Shira Kol HaHelet is spoken and therefore written with divine inspiration. It was also spoken in front of the wise people of the world. God is not referred to by Yud Kei Vav Kei in the Sefer, only Shem Elokim. Mishum de'inhu lo yade ela Shem zeh, el zeh Hashem. Because that's the only name of God these people knew. Kidamrim with Sanhedrin, as it says in Sechet Sanhedrin. Umizeh anu noagin midor dor likro Megillat Kohelet b'chol hamoed Sukkot. That's why we read it on Chol Hamoed Sukkot. Because Shlomo HaMelech gathered, he was Divrei Kohelet ben David. He was a gatherer not only of intelligence, but also the people, the nations would come. And by the by, it also explains why there's repetition in Sefer Kohelet, and why there are sometimes elements that are almost in contradiction or in tension with each other. Look who he was talking to. This year, this thing, this year, that thing, the next year, another thing. There was almost, you could say, an evolution in his thought over time. Doesn't take away that the book was written on Ruach HaKodesh. The point is, though, that it was the assembly of the various drushes, the wisdom that he gave to the people. All is for naught, and don't trust in the wealth, and don't trust in intelligence, and don't trust in the army, right? And he could say different things at different times. I find joy this way, and I lost joy over there, and I made all these gardens. Look at everything I've built, yeah? And that also explains why Chazal do say that Shlomo Melech wrote Kohelet in his later years. That's after everything was set up. That's when everyone was coming, and that's ultimately what he collated. Larry, you had your hand up. Please go ahead.
What does that mean that these people only knew HaKadosh Baruch Hu as Elohim and not as Yud Kei Vav Kei? They only knew Midat HaDin?
It means they knew God as the creator, but they did not have a covenant with God in the same way that we do. So the Shem Elohim is the Midat Hadin, but in this context, it means the universal use of the term God as creator.
Thank you.
Yeah. By the by, Elohim also as the sum of all powers. In modern parlance, the force. So he spoke their language, and he didn't make recourse to Shem Havaya, which bespeaks the relationship with the Jewish people, and the Midat Rachamim, which how do you have a Midat Rachamim with God? It's in the realm of specifically of Tefillah and Rachamim, Tshuva, etc. Not they can't do these things, but that the covenant with the Jewish people sort of flows through that. So he used more universal language. Yeah. The Abarbanel already back on Pasuk Tet in Parak Hay that we read earlier today about Hashem giving him this wisdom. He had the wisdom, he had the wealth, he had the glory. Whoops. Even though he had a lot in the physical realm, don't think that it took away from his ability to be wise. His wisdom was in a wondrous way. It's from Hashem. Yeah. And I already explained this in the earlier sections that I spoke about. V'siper katuv shayta chachmat shalom fursamet lo levad betoch amo ki im gam b'chol mamlechot haaretz ad sheyubayim anashim rabim b'chol mikol amim l'shmod chachmato. Everyone was coming from all the places, and therefore it says that all of the kings are coming. Right? It describes it and it doubles it over. It says it several times. Right? But Rav David Kimchi, he's a medieval Spanish exegete. Rav David Kimchi, the Radak. They came from all over the world. They sent emissaries, all of them, and they wanted to find out through the emissaries. But the Abarbanel disagrees. So if it's true that all the other kings came and they sent emissaries, how come it doesn't mention in the Pshat? So Lachain, but it mentioned the Queen of Sheba. Lachain hayoter nachon lefaresu ki shahayu baim mikol amim anashim lishmon chachmat shlo behem hayu shluchim me'et malchei haaretz shamu shimato shel Shlomo. That's the difference. Malchat Shva showed up in person. Everyone else certainly was sending diplomats. They sent their wisest people, not the kings and the queens that came. The wise people came. The intelligence showed up. The intelligentsia came. Right? He had many crowns that he wore. The Keter Torah, the Chachma Rabta, the Keter Malchut, the Osher Kavod, Shekana Golzel, Tom Levavo, and the Kion Kapav. He got all of these things and said Sefer Tehillim, Chen v'chavod yitin Hashem lo'imana tov l'holchim batamim. Everything was granted him, everything that he saw and everything that he became, you should be aware is all from Hashem. That's a very religious statement. It's not, doesn't fly in the face of the Pshat. It's exactly what's in Pshat. Yeah, if you look it up, it seems fairly obvious. And just for our consideration, there's a bit of a debate. Did the kings all come and Malkat Shva is the representative because of when she came, the fact that this was like the farthest far out thing, and this was, after all, in that period of time, it was a woman who was the head of state, she was coming, or is it no, she was the only one who came, everybody else sent their wise people. Now, why didn't she send her wise people? She came on her own. Don't know. He gave her everything that she wanted. In Pasuk Yud Gimel in our chapter, in words of Chachma, Divrei Chachma, Milvada Shernatanla, in addition to what he gave her, Mizimrat Haaretz, what he gave her from the music of the land, as we find, that's an expression, it really means from the beauty of the land in terms of the fruits of the land. This expression, Mizimrat Haaretz, was already spoken. We had it in the class on Monday, actually, by Yaakov Avinu. K'chu mizimrat haaretz, right? Give the gift to the viceroy of Egypt. So take all different things from the land. Midvarim nimtzaim be'eretz Yisrael, ve'enim nimtzaim be'artzah. These were things she couldn't get in her land. She brought spices that he didn't have. She brought gold. He gave her what he had. Natan lamehem ki yad hamelach k'lomar larov. Uvedivrei hayomim milvad asher havia el hamelach, u'pirish milvad asher natan la kineged b'shivia el hamelach. Right? Whatever she had originally given her, now he gave her even more in their interaction. Rashi died in the year 1105. I don't have to tell you when he died every time, but it's germane to the comment we're about to read. Rashi in Sefer Melachim, in the Bar Ilan responsa version that I have, says, he gave to Malkat Shva, Natina Zu, Eine El Limud Chachma. He taught her all the wisdom she needed. Kol Cheftzah, everything she desired. What does it say here? He had relations with her. Not that he married her, but he had relations with her. V'nolad mimena Nebuchadnezzar. From her was born the child of their union was Nebuchadnezzar. V'hechriv habayit, and he was the one who destroyed the house, the Beit HaMikdash. She'ama taf yod shanim 410 years. B'chelik kol yod bat shvatim, that was in the 12 tribes. Bahari Zal. We find this in a teaching from the Ari HaKadosh. The Ari Zal died in a terrible plague that befell the land of Israel in the 16th century. So fill in now what I spoke about a little bit on Monday in the Chumash Be'iyun class. Sometimes things from the margins get put into the text, and when the printing press got started with putting the manuscripts into printing press, this fell in. Clearly, Rashi was not quoting from the Arizal 4 centuries before he ever lived and died. This is the Lohaya. However, there is apparently this tradition as well. It has its own problems. I'm sure you understand. Nebuchadnezzar, according to what we know, is around at the end of the first Beit HaMikdash. He destroys it. It's 410 years later. Did he live a super long time? Does this mean that it's not literally the next descendant was Nebuchadnezzar, but eventually came Nebuchadnezzar? Another problem, Nebuchadnezzar, Melech Bavel, you might recall, is off to the east. This woman comes from the southwest. How did he get over there? Unless she's really from Arabia. There's obviously a deeper message here. I was not successful personally in finding in Mamarei Chazal, meaning in the Talmud Bavli, Talmud Yerushalmi, and the Midrashim, that Malkat Shva marries the King Shlomo. On the level of Pshat, I think the Torah, the Navi rather, would not spare any expense to say that happened. It says so about Bat Paro, so much worse to say about Malkat Shva. I mean, we're going to read in chapter 11, as everybody knows, he has, 700 wives and 300 concubines. Okay, so he had this also. So look, it's hard for me to understand the level of Pshat. I don't know how it got into Rashi. I mean, I think I know. That's probably what happened, because it's anachronistic to claim that it's actually Rashi, unless Rashi and Melachim Aleph, it's not really Rashi altogether, and it's someone later. I don't know. But Kol Cheftzah, says Rashi, from what we know, Milvara Asher Natan La Matanot Umigdanot Hametsuyin Kan Benetzim Mikuma. In addition to what he gave her all she desired, meaning in the world of Chachma. You just read it together, take out the brackets completely, and finito. We have what we need. Okay. I will here, I guess, mention, because I know someone else is already thinking it, and I was thinking it also when I was learning the Pshat. Okay, what does this mean about the Ethiopian Jews and their claim that they descended of Malkat Sheva? It's a very important sugya. Some say no, they're really from Shevet Dan. They do say they're from Shevet Dan, so that's not Malkat Sheva, that's Shevet Dan. we could go off road over here and have a whole shiur about Ethiopian Jewry, and then the question when they were found, do they need to convert again? Do they not? The very famous Chuvot, specifically of Chacham Ovadia, Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal, that essentially was determinative in this regard. But okay, separate discussion. Yeah, where's she actually from? It doesn't say in the Pshat they got married. It's Occam's razor, like it's not hiding this, given everything else that's in the Tanakh. And the earliest report that I found seems to be this one right here in this Rashi, which is anachronistic, quoting from the Ari. The Abarbanel, at the beginning of the 11th Perek Yud Aleph, sort of has some. Shelley had a comment, a question. Please go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
I can't hear.
Yeah. With the Rashi, the idea that Nebuchadnezzar comes out of there. Yeah, I agree. There's no Peshat or anything like that, but somebody is trying to tell you that all these foreign wives and all this opening up the kingdom is not good.
All is set up for chapter 11.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that maybe the Ethiopian Jews come out of that would be okay. But the idea that Nebuchadnezzar, who's going to destroy the Beit HaMikdash, and then all that stuff in Daniel, where he's
right there,
Bizarro God, Bizarro Shlomo. Oh my, forget it. I mean, this is just another example of sort of putting that in, just like I know I have to say Lahavdil, King Arthur.
Yes,
that when Camelot is at its zenith, the rod is already in there. Well, the rod is already in here, and they're trying, and Rashi is trying to tell you that.
I'm glad you brought it up. Let's look to a few more sources left today. So indulge me. Let's go through it. A few more minutes left here. The Abarbanel, who I mentioned previously, and remember the Abarbanel is, of course, a great gadol in his own right, and a parshan. He's also the finance minister in Spain until the horrible year, the annum horribilis of 1492, right, of the expulsion, etc. So, but he has a certain political eye or ear or heart that he listens with a little bit, and he basically says, "V'aklal yotzim sprei Shlomo HaMelech kulamhu." Here's the general principle that comes out of all the stories about Shlomo HaMelech. And why is saying in chapter 11? Because that's where things tilt and go downhill. So sort of at the moment, leading into what ends up being a downhill slide. Let me tell you the basic idea, he says. I'm going to give you three things. Shebabacharuto nishtalem bishlosha minei shlemuyot. Madrega elyon al kol bnei doro va'al kol asher hayu lefanav va'acharav lo kamu kamohu. I mean, wow. In his being chosen, here's what was completed on three types of completion. On the highest level, over all of his generation and over everything that came before and everything after, nothing ever arose like Shlomo HaMelech. The first thing, the first shleimut, the first wholeness, Nafshi b'chachma. It's spiritual. It's ruchniasdik. What is it? Chachma, wisdom. Shnishtalim b'me'od, complete wisdom. All right. We don't have time to read the whole thing inside, but we find out that. Well, I'll just read one line of it. Halo tira David aviv biotonar katan amarlo ish chachamata v'yadata et asher ta'aseh. When he was still a young lad, David HaMelech, already his father was told how wise. Wise he was, etc. And you will do what you will do, right? He was already well regarded in this way, and Shlomo, from the time of his birth, was already very, very wise about everything. And when he asked from Hashem for a Lev Shomea, Hashem told him, "I'll make it even more." Right, even before that vision. With Hashem, with the dream, the Abarbanel says he already had lots of wisdom. He got it from his father, came by it honestly. Now this was just super. And that's the ultimate shleimut. Hashem completed it. Number two, Vashlemut Hasheni hu gvura v'mimshala, his mightiness, his rulership, right? So the matter here of gevura is not just the matter of warring, He doesn't actually fight wars per se, but the fact that he lives at a time of a Pax Judaica, right? Pax Israelica, right? Shlomo, we know his strength. Everyone was paying tribute to him. Everyone was under his thumb. They were bringing him gifts year over year, right? It's from the Arabian area, right? And from all the other places, right? Even Egypt was brought down, if you will. He rules over Egypt. It doesn't mean that he has troops everywhere. You don't have that many troops. It's antiquity. But if they're paying you a tribute and they're selling you things and the trade is going, and they look to you for guidance. And as we saw in previous installments, and we're going to come back to, because that's going to be the whole problem with Bat Paro, but they have an embassy in Gezer, and they have all sorts of cities where the horses in their stables are stored. They're all Egyptian horses, right? The stamp on them, the stempel, they're all from made in Egypt, because that's the best place to get the horses from. And then you have obviously the Milo, and Bat Paro is right there, and it's the Mikdash and the Milo, and right, we'll come back to it. V'yadanu Gamkein is this massive, humongous army, right? And the fact is that what did he have in his great Gevura and Memshala? He had the power of deterrence, and he had the power. Everyone was coming to him, and he lived at a time, therefore, of great peace. Yeah. Number 3, his wealth, his ability to provide for others. So we have the wisdom, we have the power, political, economic, military, and then we have just the vast wealth that he had, right? So he has this we keep learning about it over and over again, right? All of the different gold they keep bringing him, and the horses. Here, not in the military sense of it, but the pageantry of the experience, the whole element of it. Now, when you keep going in this commentary, we get to this. We have indeed all of his wealth and everything that he had, right? And it was out of control. Sof davar, all is said and done. Lo haya b'Yisrael v'gam ra'iti b'sifra ha'umot mi tronus u'mi ha'yevanim u'mi ha'romiim sh'ra'iti habe misifreihem. I've seen a lot of literature. Let me just mention where the kinds of books that I've seen from Troy, from the Greeks, from the Romans. I saw a lot of their books. Sipur Melach Echad she'italev yitgadav remember chom asav k'Shlomo HaMelech. I never saw a report of anyone who was as high in all of their actions as Shlomo HaMelech. Now, he knows about Alexander of Macedon, and he's heard about the Roman, the Caesars, but he means here in all of these realms. You could have someone who excelled in one realm, but they're not also going to be the wisest person, or vice versa. But here, Shlomo, he had it all. The other kings, even Shaul and David, even the kings that came later, they did not have anything on the level that Shlomo HaMelech had. He had all of this. Now, here's the part that's just a Barbanel, beautiful, amazing, and linking Sefer Melachim to Sefer Tehillim. Remember that? Till now, we in Sefer Shmuel Bet, we did a lot in Tehillim. So we're going to open Tehillim now at the end. Vein Safek. Shlomo, your father davened for you. It's because of the tefillot of a generation past that this happened. Kiva Omer, when it says in Tehillim chapter 72, Lishlomo Elokim Mishpatech Lamelach Tein, Ramaz, Sheyitain Lo Sisra and Hagav Amada, Keomro Sham, Bet V'chol HaMizmor, Yadin Amcha B'tzedek, B'aniyacha B'mishpat, Vayered Mayim Adyam Lefanav Yichruut Siyim Alchit Ashish V'im V'Gomer Ramazal Gvurato. Abarbanel reads back into Sefer Tehillim all of the elements that actually came to pass for Shlomo HaMelech. So if you open up the book of Tehillim, chapter 72, in chapter Tehillim, we learn here that the chapter opens not with words by David, but with words by Shlomo. No, says the Abarbanel. Li Shlomo means for Shlomo. This is what his father, David Malka Mashiach, wanted to have happen for his son. And when you read it, we don't have to read the whole thing inside, but it's all the different elements of wholeness, and including the element of dominion at sea, including the ships, including all the nations coming forward. And all of this, may the name of Shlomo be all over the world. Yehi shmo le'olam. Right? Lifnei shemesh yinon shemo v'yitbaruchu vo kol goyim ya'asruhu. Right? They're coming to be with him. They're so happy to be together with him. And no safek, no doubt, says the Abarbanel, that David davened for this, and that's what came to pass. And al kavod amar yehi shmo le'olam lifnei shemesh yinon. He's quoting all the psukim, right? How high he was, everything was going to be the fee. Because all of this that happened to Shlomo was not natural. It was unnatural. It was all from Hashem. Amar b'sof dvarav baruch Hashem Elokim Elokeiso seniflot levado. Where's that pasuk? So turn to the Koren Tanakh, page 761. It's verse 18. Baruch Hashem Elokim Elokeiso seniflot levado. Since his glory was from God, Amar, and then he added, Shlomo, David HaMelech added, Uvaruch shen kvodo le'olam v'yimalech kvodo kol haaretz. Amen v'amen. He added there, like a Baruch Shem Kvod Malchuto le'olam vad. It's after he said, because I know that the ultimate glory of Hashem's kingdom in this world is going to be Emir Tzah Hashem, through my son. So at the end, I offer praise and thanksgiving to Hashem over that. Because God shared his glory with Shlomo. He shared his glory, the divine glory with Shlomo. Therefore, the Kisei Hashem, Shlomo Melech is sitting on. Since all the desire of Shlomo and his prayer was with regard to Shlomo, Beno, since it says this was his request and his desire and his prayer, Amar Acharav, it says afterward, what's the last line of that book of Tehillim, the second book of Tehillim? Specifically, Kalu Tfilot David ben Yishai. This is the end of the prayers of David ben Yishai, meaning wrote Salomar, Shebezeh Kalut Filotav El Hanar Zeit Palel Velo Adavar Acher Acharav. This was the end of all of the tefillot, not just the end, the conclusion, but the end, the purpose in a certain way, the conclusion for this child that he davened. He borrows, the Abarbanel borrows the language of Sefer Shmuel at the beginning with the birth of Shmuel. So and he did not pray for anything else. So David is still involved, the legacy of Shlomo. And here, that's the capstone of the whole of the work of Shlomo HaMelech, is he davened that his child should carry on a legacy and should be even more. And look at that, it was fulfilled. Kalu, Tfilot David ben Yishai. And that also explains, by the way, why every single day we recite the last few chapters of Sefer Tehillim, 145 through 150. And then we actually recite verses 18 and 19 among that little last paragraph that caps off before Vayivarach David, for those who know the Tefillot well. The one last line for the Abarbanel, and then we'll have to see the rest of the Abarbanel another time, like when we get back to this subject. We see that all of this completeness was extant for Shlomo in his when he was a child, in his youth, in other words, in his young age. But now you return and you will see in his old age, kulam. He lost all of these things. Etc., etc. He's going to lose the wisdom. He's going to lose the power, right? Not through him, but unfortunately through what happens with Rechav Am. And that part is sad. But why end on a sad note here? I gave you also from this past week's Parashat Shavua that Rashi tells us that when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu, Lech reid ki shichet amcha, you go down because your nation sinned, Rashi pointed out, shichet ha'am lo ne'amar, not that a nation as this caused destruction, but amcha, your nation. Says Rashi, Erev Rav, shekibalta me'atzacha v'giartem v'lo v'giartam v'lo nimlachta bi. You, Moshe, took the decision to accept an Erev Rav, the riffraff, if you will, the also-rans, the people who were the mixed multitude from Egypt, and you converted them. I didn't. You didn't ask my permission. Amarta tov shidku gerin b'shchina. You said it should be good. There should be more people joining the Jewish people, and to be closer in. Heim shachtu v'shchitu. They destroyed and caused destruction. According to Rashi, bringing in those converts was not such a good idea. That McDover softens it a bit. He doesn't think it's exactly that. He thinks it's dalat ha'ami b'nei Yisrael. It's the lowly members of the nation of Israel. He doesn't differentiate between those who converted, those who did not. Rashi will go on, when the 3,000 people are actually put to death for worshiping the golden calf, that's the Erev Rav, the part of the Erev Rav that was involved actually in worshiping the golden calf. It's a bit of an open question, a more than open question, as we will see. Next, we get back to this subject. When we get to this whole story with Bat Paro, we're coming to it. And of course, the idea that he had all these wives and, where that leads. But for that and more, we'll have to come back for the next year. So I have to run, unfortunately. I must let you go. Please forgive me. Next week, again, no shear on Thursday. The following Thursday, March 10th. The shear will not be in the morning. It will be in the evening, either 7:30 or 8 o'clock. I'll let you know the time. That's Thursday, March 10th, and that's the Purim Megillah shear. Then we're on hiatus. The slot will continue, but it'll be Pesach related. And then after that, after Pesach, we're going to get back to everything else having to do with Sefer Melachim Alef. But we have other things we have to deal with, as has been our minhag now for all these years, well over a decade. So we'll continue with that, God willing. Okay, Ad Kan for today.